I had this professor one time look at me and said, Kolby, are you tired or are you fatigued? And maybe it was my youthful ignorance or whatever, but I snapped back and was like, fatigued. I have to go to class, talk about sports. I feel like I live the dream life. There's people out there who have to go hang sheetrock by themselves for 18 hours a day, go home, cook food for the family. And I think Virginia Tech fan base right now can empathize a lot with that person who could be feeling fatigued. As we welcome you back into Kolby's Corner on Wednesday, November 5th, year of our Lord 2025, as the James Franklin saga, as titled on the last video, seems to continue. We'll have updates on that situation, some other things regarding the team as they are obviously on this bye week, and a whole lot more. So appreciate everyone jumping in here. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, dump any comments or questions you may have in the live chat. We'll try and touch on those as we go on. Just want to say thank you to everyone who's got this show up and going. The support has meant a lot, and it's been a ton of fun going. Hopefully we got some of the Wi-Fi issues fixed tonight. If not, hang with me, and we're just continue to try and better the product. And also, first off, I'd be remiss if we didn't direct a lot of the traffic over to vtscoop.com for all the updates regarding coaching search, team intel, but obviously right now, the cycle being completely dominated by the coaching search. There is no better, and I can say that pretty unequivocally, no better outlet that will give you the most up-to-date, latest info like vtscoop.com. That is the best place to be. Join for $1. Go over there on the message board. The most lively community. I know I had the opening about being fatigued, and you'll see a lot throughout the day, but that is where you're going to have the best Tech online community. And as we maybe dealing with some internet issues as well again tonight, but appreciate everyone sticking with me. And make sure to go check out vtscoop.com. Evan's been doing a really great job over there, as I see in the chat. Love Evan, Doug, and CZY. So definitely go check out vtscoop.com. A lot of this is going to come out over there. But jumping right into things, appreciate everyone getting in here. Let's sort of recap where we left off the last episode, obviously, pertaining to James Franklin and Virginia Tech. So last episode, obviously went over through reports, can confirm James Franklin has visited the area multiple times, searching. So he'd been on campus, obviously reaching out to different coaches about willingness to follow him at his next stop, or just even sending out feelers on that. Same in the regard of sending out feelers to recruits and players of, hey, would you be willing to go here? Hey, this is sort of what I'm thinking. So a lot of that obviously falls in line with Virginia Tech as they've gotten deep stage discussion. So that's a little bit of a recap of the latest intel from last time. As we come to Wednesday, November 5th, I think it is really important to touch on the head and not run from it, the timeline. If you go back in some of these shows, it felt like, hey, this was going to get done. It was going to get done imminently. And obviously for Virginia Tech side, that was the biggest thing. That was Virginia Tech side trying to drive that imminently. Like Jimmy Sexton, James Franklin, they held all the leverage. Like, hey, why did we have to get this done so soon? Obviously that was coming from Virginia Tech, wanting to lock things down, wanting to get their by far and away top target. And we'll get into that later in the show as well. But by far and away, if you could get your top target locked in this early in the cycle, that would be the absolutely dream utopia scenario if they could get that going. Obviously, as things go on, past the Monday deadline here on Wednesday, not expecting anything that imminent, as was touched on in here and different things. Things come up off the field, obviously still waiting for different leverage plays from different places. But if you want to talk just straight timeline, I would expect closer to 10 days. And even still in that window, if you want to talk about November, let's just say 13th through 18th, and those are very rudimentary numbers. Don't put too much stock in that. You're still not signing an active head coach in that window. So if it were to be James Franklin and it is 10 to 15-ish days, that still puts you at a much larger advantage, as opposed to a lot of different places still getting him in there sooner, as you would even some of the backup options, as we'll touch on. So that puts you in a really advantageous spot if they were able to do that as well. But it would definitely come closer in that window as they mull things over and still look at other situations and how some other searches evolve and progress. So I think that's really important to say, is that obviously Virginia Tech side wanted it to be a lot more imminent this week even. I don't see that playing out with Franklin. I know there's a lot of panic and different things. I think it is important to reiterate that there is no deal done, obviously, in that comment. And I, personally, as me, I still feel pretty good about the deal getting done. A lot of positive momentum, but I don't think it will be as soon. I think you could see the writing on the wall. And I know imminent. And yes, Virginia Tech was trying and see how that shakes out. But I think it is also important to say, not to be remiss in that Monday deadline was real and sort of, hey, draw a hard line in the sand. Like, this was our last and final and best offer. And from the sounds of it, very, very competitive offer that is going to really either reshape and re-level the whole landscape of college football, or at least let know a lot of other suitors, hey, Virginia Tech is really stepping up to the plate to be for real in this next age of college football as realignment continues, that, hey, they're really, really serious about this investment. Now, obviously, that will change for different options, but still, to see that level of investment for a top target, if it were to come to fruition, I think would be really impressive. So, like, sounds competitive. Obviously went out on Monday. It sounds like the NIL pledges and a lot of those things were the hangups with the staff, but they got that pushed through. And, even with what's pledged from NIL, it sounds like you get close to triple of what it was this year if they were to land Franklin, which is obviously really big. Franklin is the guy, as well as, if you want to look deeper in the process, a Shane Beamer guy that would really open up the wallets of some of that big base. And that's not to say other people won't move the needle as much, but it honestly is. That's why you lock in on your top target. And if it doesn't come to fruition, there's still a lot of quality coaches, but it will obviously be, and truly, a little bit of a letdown, obviously, coming off of Franklin, of the immediate upside of what he can bring, not only on the field, but off the field as well. So obviously asked for some time, a lot going on off the field, dealing with different things, but I think it is important to say that it's not you're getting strung out and it's a back and forth still. Now, the sides have talked and it sounds positive, but it's not an ongoing negotiation process where it's a give and take. It sounds like, hey, we laid it out there, and now it is fully, I know we said it for a little while, but the ball is in James Franklin's court. If he wants to coach, it sounds like Virginia Tech will likely be his best offer, or if he just won't grace a sideline next year. But I think that's also important. Fans are obviously asking, why the wait? Why the wait? It's all there. It's all there. Very competitive package, met every ask and more. Why wait? Because there's a job down at Louisiana State. There's a job down in Auburn, Alabama, that, like Virginia Tech there early on, probably didn't have the most functional searches going on. But as things continue, you don't want to take those options fully off the plate, as both those places have shown the ability to win, not only get to a national championship within the last 6 to 15 years for those institutions. So obviously that's very advantageous and something that is definitely going to be taken into account. I think the other big hinge point that's been a massive hinge point has been Florida State this whole time. I know last week the Kolby Corner didn't get posted, but live watching that Wake Forest game, and it's almost comical. Like, do you see that coming open? You sort of hear mixed reviews. If that were to come open, I think James Franklin would heavily have interest. Now, is Franklin directly talking to those schools? No, but obviously, yes, he's going to try and see where they're at and set the market with him if that's what they're to do. So I think that's really important to see about those other potential jobs or what could be a holdup. Now, there was obviously murmurs today. If you're ever on the VT Scoop message boards, which I can't emphasize or promote heavily enough, make sure to get over to vtscoop.com. Go sign up for that VIP subscription. Evan G. Watkins, Doug Bowman, Matesis doing incredible work on this. Just all the best content is coming over there. I cannot say that enough. But, seeing the Arkansas pop up, I think, as we'll get into, Virginia Tech is going to try and throw their hand at some leverage. Obviously, these other schools in Sexton are going to try and throw their hand at some leverage. I don't really see Arkansas as that realistic potential suitor, as you did with the LSU of Florida or Florida State, if those ever get interest or legitimate interest. So those would definitely change the picture. I don't think Arkansas moves the needle for the whole Franklin family, and I think that's an important aspect. So I saw that coming out. I'm not sure if that will exactly be a big blocker in this whole process. Obviously, still letting a lot play out. Time is fully on the side of Sexton and Franklin, not Virginia Tech. That was why they wanted to get the deal done, and still do here relatively soon. Cycle pretty honestly unprecedentedly early, but I think the biggest thing is that comes in. I don't know all the contract stipulations with being given a fair market value contract, or if he's just pursue work and then take the year off. Is that a possibility? Because I think that could be something. It's like, okay, if Virginia Tech leaves everything out there, pushes all the chips in, and James Franklin's like, okay, nope, not this cycle. I'm going to wait for the perfect opportunity. Obviously, that's his prerogative, but I think that would be pretty crushing for the administration at Virginia Tech as they've honed in on their top target. And that's not to say there's not quality ball coaches or different quality coaches out there. It's just, the ceiling, or I guess the floor that immediately gets raised if you were to bring in a Franklin next year would obviously not be there, and would be a little disappointing in the whole search process. But overall, I think those are some things to monitor. Franklin is obviously, and I need to reiterate, by far the top target. By far the top target. There's no secret about that. With that said, as today on November 5th, I still feel good about a deal getting done. Not as soon as, I probably would have projected here early in the week, late last week. I think there's still things to play out. It's just, and a lot of this is speculation now on my behalf. A lot of that, obviously, that is based on reporting. A lot of this is now just based on how I'm feeling. Still feeling good. I think he will be on a sideline next year, and I think that best opportunity, at least right now, by far the best opportunity is back. Still to reiterate, deals in place. There was no verbal agreement, so you saw people posting on Monday, Tuesday, earlier in the week saying that it's all but wrapped up. That is not further from the case. It is not true. So make sure to check out vtscoop.com for the just most up-to-date coverage. Don't get lost in a lot of these different reports and insiders. I would just highly suggest vtscoop.com for your placement intel. Sign up for $1 first month. I think you'll definitely get your worth out of it. But then obviously shifting off of Franklin, I know a lot of this is about head coaching search, and people are even getting fatigued talking about that, but we're on a bye week. This is what we want to hear, so we'll get into it. As we touched on the show even last week, Manny Diaz is one of those names as a backup. And as we hinted on Monday, before some other top insiders, I guess, got a hold of it, PJ Fleck is another name in there involved, as well as Bob Chesney at JMU. Before some of those other names were regurgitated by top insiders. So obviously looking at PJ Fleck, this is someone who's not repped by Jimmy Sexton, was hinted at on the Monday show. Is that going to be a legitimate choice there, or is that another leverage play? Like it sounds like they may be trying to play with Arkansas. Not sure. Obviously, had great bowl success at Minnesota, turning around Western Michigan. There's a lot there. Obviously, Bob Chesney has been highlighted a ton on the show, what he's been able to do at JMU, Holy Cross, Assumption, flipping that around the staff he's built out. It's just a lot of these coaches don't have the pedigree, staff, and won't exactly open wallets the exact same way that a Franklin would. You want to talk about Manny Diaz, but like you also talk about with the Chesney and Diaz, if these do become more viable options, and I'm sure there will be twists and turns. I mean, the committee's not going to be held essentially at gunpoint and said, okay, we have all our eggs, all the chips pushed in on Franklin, and we get left high and dry. We're not talking these. There's obviously been initial contact, it sounds like, with some of those names. But as you look at it, even beyond Diaz and Chesney, if other names pop up, I think a really valuable thing to look at in this is who's going to be coaching well into December and January. Diaz could have Duke poised to go play in the ACC championship and get that bid for the ACC. JMU could easily be that highest rated G5 team and get that bid in. So it's just going to be really interesting because I think the committee, Virginia Tech stakeholders as a whole, if you flip having Franklin 10 days-ish before the end of the season, and could even, people want to look at that Miami date and setting stuff up for that. If you have that in mind and that's your magnum opus, and then you have, the other option, you're hiring a coach in January, like right before the portal, and a Diaz because they were coaching into December, I think that would be really disappointing for a lot of the shareholders involved. So that's just something to watch. Obviously, very quality coaches could have great success, but it's a big fall off from sort of the immediate return in player, staff, and stability going forward that would not only for the timeline, but it's also so I think those are all elements part of it. People want to talk about a timeline. I believe there's a board of visitors lined up there for November 15th or 16th, somewhere in that window, right around, I guess, FSU on the 15th, so maybe the week before there. But I think Franklin, he's going to take his time, see what other options happen as of right now, and I think moving forward, Virginia Tech is going to be that best option. It's just balls in his court if he wants to take it or not, and wait for the best option. But like I said, reiterate from the last show, Virginia Tech can rest assured. I know there's a thread over on vtscoop.com, lose and sleep. I think Virginia Tech and people involved can feel pretty confident that Virginia Tech left no stone unturned. They've done all they could for James Franklin. And yeah, we'll follow it as closely as we can on this bye week, Wednesday, November 5th. Talk to Philip Montgomery, defensive line coach J.C. Price, Kyle Altuner, and Elijah Fall today. it's a bye week. Really, not much going on with team scoops projections, but obviously the coaching carousel is dominating now. It could be interesting to see what coaches stick with them. We touched on this last show for other people, obviously turned around and regurgitated a lot of that. Fontel Mines potentially sticking on. Maybe a Matt Moore. I would be a little more shocked to see an Elijah Brooks or some of those other people, but we'll see with that. But with that, like I said, I do, before I get into some questions, that's a decent update of where it is right now on Wednesday, November 5th. I know this is a day-to-day deal. I would just say vtscoop.com if you want to stay in the know. We only do this show twice a week and on game days when there's a game. So that is the best place to stay up to date with everything. Great community over there. I cannot recommend that enough. But thank you, everyone, for jumping in here. Dump some comments in the live chat. We'll try and touch on those before we get out of here. But yeah, thanks, everyone. Got it. Andrew saying Franklin's not looking good. I know this was pretty early in the show before I got into some of those updates, but I'll just circle back for anyone just jumping in here now. I still feel, this is from my perspective, I still feel pretty good. There's a lot of positive indicators for this getting done. Just the timeline, I think, is not going to be where, and maybe I'm too caught up in the message board culture, obviously working over there, but a lot of people want this done right now. And, I think the biggest frustration, pain point with people is, okay, everything's on the table now. What's going to change? Why our holdup? Why is there a snag? And I mean, in any negotiation, when you're talking about the figures you're talking about, potentially, I mean, in total, like 9-figure deals potentially with staff and everything included. I mean, there's going to be snags. It's a massive life decision for a lot of people. It webs out a ton. So I think overall, Virginia Tech has to feel like they're in a good place. It's just really up to James Franklin on if he wants to coach next year, because I think Virginia Tech has given him a pretty competitive package for what's asked of, what's out there. Not only peer institutions, but also institutions that have outpunched Virginia Tech year after year over the last decade. So I think you have to feel pretty good overall. If you miss that, I would just jump back like 10 minutes once this is posted. Yeah, I touched on this earlier, but VT Scoop is goated. Love Evan, Doug, and CZY legend. So if you guys just get this from this show, I would highly, obviously say, not going to beg, but subscribe to the show and go get over to vtscoop.com. It's a great community of covering Virginia Tech. So they do a great job, no doubt. Lucky to be a part of it. Shout out. I mean, free marketing, this is lit all day and night for the last days. I don't even know where to go. Different barbers. I got to get my hair cut here soon, so maybe I should check in with some people. Barbecue. It's got a little bit of everything over there. Do you think the weekend is a chance to be signed in the bye week? No. Based on intel, and like I said, it's a sort of revisionist history, but as this is a day-to-day deal, and as things ebb and flow, I would not expect this to happen. I would still expect, and I know this is tough, but probably closer to 10 to 15 days on this if there were to be an announcement. Maybe a little less, but I don't expect anything imminently. And I know there for a time last week, I feel like I was saying imminently all the time. And a lot of that is still was tied into that Monday date of saying, okay, we're going to push it all in. There is no more negotiations. This is where we're at. You can meet us here and we'll talk. We'll still talk and have positive discourse, but we're not going to be held at gunpoint. And this is where we're at. Take it or leave it. And obviously Franklin and them held the leverage, but Virginia Tech is like, we do our own due diligence and pursue other kids if we have to do that. So I think we'll obviously expect anything to be signed by this in the bye week. Appreciate the question. After Franklin, who is the next two in line? Great question. Touch on that as well. I would say a combination of PJ Fleck's name. We heard Diaz's name last week on the show. Obviously, you mentioned PJ Fleck on the Monday show. Bob Chesney's come up over the last month. I would say somewhere in there. Heard that they're somewhere all. That would be my top target by far and away at any job. I don't think he will end up at Virginia Tech. It sounded like he was in line there at Auburn. Now maybe things should be shifting down there. I think he still probably is in line for a good job this cycle, or he could pull a Franklin and stay at Tulane a year and see what opens in a year. I just don't see him at Virginia Tech. I think those would be the names to watch for now. As they come out, we'll check our next show on Monday night or before that, vtscoop.com if you want to hear. But as of right now, those are some of the names we're hearing. VT Scoop is hearing. You may hear it regurgitated elsewhere as well. But Date I keep hearing is the 17th. Not sure why. Do you have any insight? Well, over on the message board, obviously, very lively community. You have people saying there was a date, I believe, made for the 17th for a head coaching announcement at Merriman. What's that to be? I don't know. There've been so many twists and turns. I don't think they had that premeditated. Now that does fall in line with there's a board of visitors meeting because the game's Saturday the 15th. There might be one. I guess that'd be Sunday, or maybe it'd be the 14th Friday. I mean, this would have to be an all-time dream scenario if you were to be this soon, 14th, and then turn around and have, I guess, an announcement that Monday. I'm not so sure about that. I think Virginia Tech and the shareholders, stakeholders, the board of visitors, everyone on the committee would be jumping for joy if it were to turn like that. But I'm not sure if they could get it done by then. But I wouldn't be overly shocked. I think that falls in the window. It's just I would maybe even err on the side of a little after that. That FSU game. If you still get that midweek of Miami, you still could swing that weekend to be a big recruiting weekend. I think if it happens, it's going to happen before Miami. So I think that would be a positive window. But like to throw anything on a date right now, that would be sort of crazy. Yeah, I think this is a fair point. Like obviously working on vtscoop.com, knowing the audience of this live stream, like the stature of Virginia Tech's job, maybe is a little like, and when you take off the maroon and orange colored glasses, yeah, that's LSU. That the last 3 coaches before Kelly won national championships. That's Florida, Urban going back to back. Like those are premier jobs. The Swamp, Death Valley, Lane Stadium in all its glory still, but there is a different level of support, resources, and like that's hard to hear, obviously knowing the audience and everything, but away that Florida footprint is a lot different. That SEC schedule is a lot different than being in the Mid-Atlantic, being in the ACC, let alone. So, yeah, I think those places, if you really want to compete for a national championship, set you up, but at the same time, they can put you in the meat grinder. So I think just being really realistic about where Virginia Tech shapes up nationally as a job and what everyone's looking for, because it has a lot of positives for James Franklin, but at the same time, just looking at it purely objectively, Florida and LSU are definitely a step ahead of where Virginia Tech is. Is Dan Mullen towards the top of the list? Not heard his name pop up. Yeah, Mars, I believe, appreciate you jumping in here. FSU is the one. I think that would be fair for Virginia Tech stakeholders, people on the committee. I think that is one. If Florida State does decide to pull the trigger and let Mike Norvell go, that could definitely throw a wrench in the plans of Virginia Tech and change the game plan of Jimmy Sexton and James Franklin, because that is one that has the year of being in the ACC. It has the backbone of national championship caliber, with Jimbo and obviously Bowden and that pedigree, So that is definitely one that has a lot of the infrastructure. Now, where's the alignment? Alignment. I said it 3 weeks ago on the show, and it's so big, and now I feel like it's even more prevalent with all these coaches getting fired. Where is the alignment going to be at all these institutions? And I think you can ask the same question of Virginia Tech. Who's going to be the athletic CEO? In a couple of years, you're staring down not only realignment in college football, who's going to be the president of the institution. Obviously, just had an election in the state that could change different things. So there's just a lot of factors that weigh in for every decision, and there's layers to it. So that's why maybe even, getting a little ahead of your skis when you talk about, okay, this is going to happen imminently. Like, yes, it makes sense when dealing down non-bigger investments like they just even put into the athletics program, of how making essentially a program defining, honestly, unity defining this code. When you look at what this could define, this search, and like not to put too much pressure on it, but like just even having a conversation. When you talk about Virginia Tech as an institution, that 1999 national championship run, that 2004 getting into the ACC, like what's the applications? What did that change the stature of the university? I'm sure Washington State and Oregon State, they're fine institutions and they'll continue to academic classes and be all right. But say that they have not been mentally altered forever after the whole Pac-12, be a little bit asinine to say. Like, obviously, fun changes to that university for getting left out of the dance. And this is sort of the hire. This is it. All chips are pushing on the middle. And that's not to say Bob Chesney and Manny Diaz or Fleck or whoever comes up is not going to be that quality coach. But after knowing that you targeted Franklin and the way the twists and the turns, and you've done everything in your power, if it weren't to come to fruition, and it is important to say, I do think it does come down. But if not, I mean, there is a lot hanging in the balance for Virginia Tech. This doesn't just become an athletic CEO or Merriman issue. This becomes a Burris issue. Like this realignment, like ponying up. And I know like this is what people are saying. Was it too little, too late? Because they've done everything. Like when you see these numbers, if they are to come out or however, like they've stepped up to the plate, but it's just not to sound dire, but like, application to think for undergraduate enrollment, the stature of your athletics department is not a big factor. I think it 100% is. And you want to be in that dance. And I think they understand James Franklin probably gives them that chance to flip things on a dime and project into that, that final dance. Be playing or find a chair when the music stops, I guess is the better way to say it. So I sort of took that and ran with it, but I think it does have pretty big implications, this next hire, for not only athletics, football program, yes, but the university as a whole. Do we know if Franklin has visited other schools? It does not sound like he has visited any other schools. Like I said, there's an overwhelming amount of positive momentum for Virginia Tech. Everything I've heard has been positive, and I think that's where the fatigue comes in. As I started stating in the open, this is a fan base or shareholders that have been so beat down where you don't even have to look forward to last cycle with Gene Knowles and you sort of get burned there. Playing Franklin to Penn State as opposed to Brent Pry. So I think all the cards are in. Like Virginia Tech has done everything, left nothing on the table, and now it's fully just up to James Franklin to take some time, mull things over, and see if this is where he wants to be. But appreciate the question, Ashton. Appreciate the Arkansas fans jumping in here. What other coaches are on a tier with James Franklin? I think this cycle for Virginia Tech, no available coaches are on that tier. That's why they've obviously targeted and laid him out there as that 1A. Like they have to do their due diligence and vet and, lock in on different backup options and start initial conversations with them. But when you lay out sort of the importance of this hire for the institution, I think they found someone that, kind of potentially could have fallen in their lap. And now, they've left no stone unturned. It's just that uncomfortable waiting game, as the title says. It's just an uncomfortable waiting game. And, not putting all your eggs in one basket, but definitely loading them up on that. So I think that's why they understand, such a heavy push for James Franklin, because they know what it means. And that's not to say, and I don't want to take anything away from obviously the other candidates, very quality, but what James Franklin could do immediately, I don't think could be compared to from anyone in the pool realistically for Virginia Tech this cycle. What's the money looking like being offered? I think just, being vague on this, like a lot of these figures are rudimentary. I would say overall, I mean, with staff and different, it's going, I mean, anyway, you cut it with staff and different things, it's going to be into 9 figures total. Just so, I mean, like you sort of can't wrap your head around like that amount of money. So it's going to be really, really competitive pool for the staff, for obviously Franklin. Like no AAV figures or anything like that, but it's very, very competitive, let alone with revenue sharing for NIL. Obviously, what they've already just infused into the athletics department, there has been a heavy investment, and they're leaning into it. So the money will be there, be on par with their institutions. Now, Virginia Tech, compared to an Alabama, is going to have to pay a premium for a player. There's no doubt, but they're on that playing field. They're not playing with one hand behind their back. So that's just where it is. If James Franklin thinks he can win here, and if he wants to coach this year at Virginia Tech, I feel like I can say pretty confidently they've laid everything out there for that. Answer this, Mari, but do you think there are any more news on Franklin this week or weekend? I don't. So it works out that they're on a bye week. So next one will be next Monday. I know people are getting a little annoyed by the updates, but just trying to lay out what we're hearing in the most informative way. Appreciate everyone showing me grace if I speak out of turn, but this is what we're hearing. So don't expect any news. I would say closer to 10 to 15 days. Virginia Tech has laid out the last final push, and now it's just where the chips may fall. So I see a lot of this, and obviously I see Arkansas fans in the chat as well. I don't believe so. Like you don't have these conversations even outside of conversations with the agent in the room with different stakeholders if you're not involved or interested, excuse me. So I think there is definitely interest, but it's like you're talking to someone and you might be really interested, but now you might be start just looking past them and looking at something different that's catching your eye. And you never want to leave something left off the table. And it's not settling or being content. I just do think it's both sides trying to do their due diligence. Virginia Tech has to do their due diligence and vet other candidates. And James Franklin, can't just be so full steam ahead, gung ho, and know what he can do and start building out a staff and recruits and thinking about different weekends, but not knowing what else could be on the table. So I think it's a mix. I don't think Virginia Tech got. I know there was some fear of that, or that there were different things going on, but I don't believe that to be the case here. I would say move on. Virginia Tech needs a coach that wants to be there. He's just using Virginia Tech as leverage. I don't think that's exactly the case. You can be highly interested in a job and still look for other opportunities. Okay, fine, Virginia Tech, set your hard deadline. You know that you're the number one option there, and you might still have a ton of interest. But I think you'd be a fool to say if you were put in that position and LSU comes open and they say, okay, we've gone through these three guys, not the person we want you, like things completely change a little bit and it can flip the rotation. So I think, as much as you want to put on your maroon and orange glasses and say, why is it not done? He doesn't want to be here, this and the other. You also have to look at it from that perspective of, okay, let's take a step back from the ledge. A lot of people on the message board actually, and think, okay, this is how negotiations work, which, not much of negotiating, but this is how deals are oriented and just sort of the process. So I think there's a part of that. Is there a real chance he goes to Auburn instead? I don't realistically see that happening at Auburn. Just in talking to different contexts within the network, 24/7 Sports, talking to different people, I don't see him going to Auburn. Now, that's something that's going to be worked on or worked against, but I do not see James Franklin working at Auburn. Someone has to offer him more than we did. That's how. Is that true? Is that true for Florida and LSU? If they're interested right now, they're not. Like, I think that is clear. Like, James Franklin is not their guy. But to think James Franklin wouldn't go to Florida or LSU on a little bit of a discount compared to Virginia Tech. Now, that's obviously not what Sexton wants, and he's going to try and set the market at a premium. But, you would take a better job and a little bit less money if you think there's still different alignment and resources there. Maybe that's Virginia Tech paying a premium. Maybe that's not. Maybe Florida and LSU still step up to the plate and outpay Virginia Tech, and they're more advantageous. And if not, if you're Virginia Tech, you tip your cap. You're probably a little frustrated, but he did all he could. But I don't think this is purely a money game. Obviously, he's had a very, very successful career coaching Vanderbilt, Penn State. So, that's a part of it, but not the largest part. Who do you think you'd bring in as his OC? I think this is a really great question, and one I'm not at all prepared to answer on November 5th. But I think if it were to be James Franklin, you don't want to answer in the affirmative, as obviously a lot is still to play out. I think that's going to be the biggest question for James Franklin, Bob Chesney, whoever comes in. A Lane Kiffin. It's not going to be Lane Kiffin, but anyone. Who is your staff going to be? Obviously, so much of the pool and the resources get diverted in salary to the head coach. But I think in this day and age, and talking to recruits, seeing how things have evolved in college football, there's not enough emphasis on a quality staff, and the staffing is so important. So I think whoever it is, whoever that staff is going to be, is really important. And I've used the example before. You don't have to look too far back to Brent Pry to really putting a highlighter on what sort of did his time in at Virginia Tech. Those initial staff hires, those initial coordinator hires, and obviously James Franklin has a lot more time wearing the big whistle, but it is still just as important to hire a quality staff as it is to land the right head coach. Got to have everything working in cohesion, as well with support staff, as well with athletic CEO, general manager, however that shakes out. I think that alignment from the top down is really important, and having the right people in the building, let alone also having the right head coach. And then also on top of that, you got to have players who can go make plays. And in this day and age, you got to have a quarterback too. So a whole lot of elements there. But yeah, I think that will be a really big question, whoever comes in. Surely Virginia Tech would want this before the Miami game for potential visits, 100%. And I think that could line up with a timeline of 10 to 15-ish days where you can still lay some of that infrastructure, get some of those plans lined up if it were to be. People talked about this weekend. I don't see that happening. But I think if it is going to happen, it would be before that Miami weekend for James Franklin. If not, probably going to have to pivot off there. How competitive is our NIL offer to James Franklin compared to an offer he'd get from an SEC school? I mean, it's right on par with a lot of those institutions. A lot of those institutions, from what we're hearing, it's right on par. So that's very advantageous. And now that's not to say players, I know in this age, there's a misconception that a lot of these guys are mercenaries. And that's not to say that there aren't, and guys who are just chasing the biggest check. But at the same time, there are guys who are willing to take less money at a premium to go play for the right coach, the right logo. So obviously James Franklin has those type of connections, but also Kirby Smart and Kalen DeBoer and different people are willing to get players at different premiums as opposed to different schools. So I think that's an element in it too. So a dollar figure can only tell you so much in NIL, because yes, there are some players that are just chasing that number, but there's also players that are looking for different things. And James Franklin would bring a lot of that in his own right. But that is an element in it. But yes, just dollar figure wise, Virginia Tech would be very, very competitive. Very competitive. I would say comfortably top 25. Probably closer into that 10 to 20 range. Shout out to Arkansas fans in the chat. Appreciate y'all hanging out with us. I think this is a really valuable debate. We have VT Hokies 2022. Appreciate the question. Do you see paying for a coach or using that money in NIL as being more beneficial? I think you have to have the balance. You have to have a really elite head coach, and obviously they command a very, very hefty salary, but you have to have both elements. And also, kind of one comes with the other. If you have a really successful coach, they're going to get paid a lot. And then with that, if you have success on the field, donors are going to be paid more. You're going to get more revenue, especially in the ACC with the revenue model. So one sort of comes with the other. If you have success, if you have a winning coach, you open up the pocketbooks of donors, which allows and opens up for more NIL opportunities. Players make the plays at the end of the day. You can talk about officials, you can talk about coaching decisions. Players have to go out and make the plays. So I think you can't take an emphasis off the players being made on the field. But at the same time, you have to pair that with the right staff and the right coaching. And a lot of the time that obviously comes with the right price. So I think that wraps that up decently well, because you have to have the right mix, but the players make the plays at the end of the day. And NIL, it's the name of the game right now. And Franklin, as compared to some of these other coaches, would definitely open up the most for in that capacity. This is a very theoretical question and might wrap this up before we get too far in a rabbit hole. If Virginia Tech hires James Franklin before Miami, do you think he would maybe coach the UVA game? No, I do not think James Franklin will coach a game for Virginia Tech. And like I said, he's not even hired yet. So like this conversation can obviously get a little bit off the rails, but no, they would let that staff obviously complete out the year, still completely trying to lay the foundation for the following year. But no, I do not expect him to be on the sideline for the UVA game. Dealing with some Wi-Fi issues, man. Sorry, y'all. Shout out Trey Biddy, legend. Probably definitely has better internet than me. I can only wait to see how the internet looked on this show compared to the last. A lot of Arkansas chat down here in the bottom. All right. Well, with that, still trying to see if anyone's got anything in here. Got through most of the questions. A lot of back and forth between the Arkansas and Virginia Tech fans. So, yeah, appreciate all the support on that. Sorry for the Wi-Fi issues. We will try and hammer that out for the next episode. But for now, I cannot say thank you enough to everyone. Got the show rolling up and off the ground. It's been a ton of fun. I would say before you depart, make sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the show with a friend if you enjoyed. I know right now we're completely lost up in the coaching carousel, but team scoops, recruiting insight, a lot Virginia Tech, a lot of just general college football here on Kolby's Corner. Appreciate the support. Make sure to check out vtscoop.com. I cannot recommend it enough to stay informed throughout this. So thank you guys so much. It's been a ton of fun getting this going. Next show next Monday night as the bye week. So we'll see you next Monday at 8:30. Hopefully with some tech assist and we get the Wi-Fi going. we'll have to figure something out here. Get a producer in here. But appreciate all the support genuinely. It means a ton. But for that, have a great rest of your week. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Enjoy college football this weekend. Peace out and God bless.